come before thee as one of thy many children. See, I am small and weak. I need thy strength and wisdom. Grant me to walk in beauty, and that my eyes may ever behold the crimson sunset. May my hands treat with respect the things which thou hast created. May my ears hear thy voice. Make me wise, that I may understand the things which thou hast taught my people, which thou hast hidden in every leaf and every rock. I long for strength, not in order that I may overreach my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to thee with pure hands and candid eyes, so that my spirit, when life disappears like the setting sun, may stand unashamed before thee.
Upon a time story. Some of you have heard some of this, some of you have heard all of this, but you're going to hear it again because it's an important part of our church story. We had 8 kids in Sunday school 20 years ago, and we could live within our bounds, and then maybe around the year 2000, we started maxing out, and we had 60 kids, and we ran out of room. So we had meetings to discuss how to deal with that. And one of the thoughts was first to maybe build an addition out back, 3 rooms maybe, and then rent them out to a daycare provider and add some space to our growing Sunday school. That was sort of seen as what we could afford, even though it was sort of a Band-Aid approach. I missed a meeting, and I've preached about this. I missed a meeting. I came back, and they said, we've decided to build a $2.2 million addition, all standalone, double the footprint of the church, and run our own preschool. And Ken Nutting said he'd never seen me speechless before, and I went home and my wife said the same thing. You're not talking, what's wrong? And I said, I can't. I was scared, and for good reason. Anybody involved knew that this was a major undertaking. It would stress us and push us and really just pull us in different directions if we were going to pull it off. I was amazed at how the people said, let's go for it. We took a vote in September 9th, 2001, that's 2 days before September 11th, and we voted unanimously to go ahead and build this building. And then 2 days later, the world changed, and we didn't know. Would there be many people still being able to afford or wanting childcare? Would we be able to afford this? What was going to happen to our culture and to our church? We didn't know. We went ahead anyway. And I was watching them for signals, and they were very confident. But David Hall ruined my life later when he said, there were some nights when I wasn't getting any sleep, and I said, am I glad you didn't tell me that, because I was looking to you for confidence. We can laugh about this now, but we went through a very difficult, I'd call it like being dragged through a knothole. It was tough. It was tough. And so we built the new building. We dedicated it in 2003. We thought about how can we honor these people? And in true First Congregational Milton style, we procrastinated. We weren't sure just what to get for a plaque. Now we were going to do a 10-year anniversary and hope nobody would notice and do it in the fall, but we got carried away with some other things. So here we are, 11 years later, calling them forward with the plaque that's been in my office for 11 years. This is on tape. It's going viral, but I'm leaving, so I don't have to worry. There's some things I can get away with. But seriously, in all seriousness, we had oodles of people who worked very hard. Very hard. But we had 4 people who stood out, who carried a ton of weight, a ton of anxiety, provided wonderful expertise. And so we honored them with this plaque, and we want to honor them now in front of you, and we want to place this plaque up in the center school. I've given that job to Elizabeth. Where's Elizabeth? There she is. Yeah. She has taste, and we have things over there. She knows how to negotiate with the Bright Horizons. I'm done. Once I do this, I'm not going to be involved in that. You can do that. Just tell me where it is. But I want to read this to you because it captures the spirit. It was one of the turning point experiences in the whole 340-year history of our church. It was one of those times when we said, yes, we can, and we went ahead and did it. And the church has been forever changed because of that. Because now we have room for many of you and your kids. Now we have over 100 kids enrolled. Couldn't have done it. And so, this plaque is dedicated to the many people who helped a daring vision become a life-giving reality through the successful completion of the center school. Our center, our faith, our future. Special recognition must also be extended to Nancy Barber, David Hall, Catherine Arnold Matejka, and Thomas Matejka, who led the way through their tireless sharing of time, energy, and expertise. And then in quotes, "No one told us that this was supposed to be impossible. We did it anyway." Dedicated November 2nd, 2003. I've already confessed, so we might change the date, but then people would wonder what we did for 11 years. So we might as well just bite the bullet. But I want all of us to express our gratitude to these people, because without them, the future of this church would have been very, very different.
Oh, not in vain we
different kinds of responses to annual meeting. You should have been in the office the last week with all the frenetic activity trying to get the reports in, because I'm not the only procrastinator in the church. Trying to get them together, bound up so that you can have the information. There are others who want the meeting to go as quickly and as smoothly as possible. There are others who have questions, might be afraid to ask because they don't want to be here all afternoon, all that stuff. But one of the most important things about an annual meeting for church is it's important for us to take stock and to try to read the signs. Our annual reports are like a diary, written in many different hands, from different perspectives, because we have most of the important work of a church doesn't happen at annual meeting. It happens week to week, month to month. Our boards, our committees, our individual groups, individual people. Candidates who will be considered for the position of pastor of this church, for example, will want to read 2 or 3 years' worth of annual reports because they tell the church's stories, your goals, your mission statements, what was attempted, what was hoped for, what was accomplished, and what was left untried or undone. You should be able to catch a church's pulse by reading these reports. Optimistic, timid, pessimistic, bullish on the future, just holding on. The impact of a church's life and ministry can't be calculated just with stats and numbers, but also the spirit within which everything is done around here. The word enthusiasm in Greek, antheos, means in God. So we use the word enthusiasm in lots of different ways, but its root meaning means somebody who's in God. They're excited about God, about faith. And that kind of enthusiasm does things. It makes things happen. So, for example, are we enthusiastic? Are we in God about people and their needs and their gifts? Are we enthusiastic in God about people, about music, and about singing? Matthew is. Read his annual report. He's declared war on people who refuse to sing because he sees you. And he says people don't even have the courage to move their lips. We're joking, but seriously, because Matthew knows that music and singing are part of a way of expressing the Spirit. And when we sing together, like we joked about it, we sang Sweet Caroline together a few months ago. The place was bouncing, or Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Or, of course, at Christmas time, when we sing the carols that everybody knows by heart. There's a sense of togetherness. When we sit in here and it's dark and we've lit our candles and we're singing Silent Night, that's an unforgettable moment. So, are we enthusiastic about giving or about reaching out beyond our congregation? Can people sense the energy of the living God here in our enthusiasms? So, take a look at your lives, and not just the work you do here, because frankly, much of the ministry that you do happens in other places. Maybe at home with your children, maybe at work, maybe with your extended family. I'm awed by the kinds of loads that people carry. I just buried a gentleman yesterday, 95, whose son, about my age, moved in with him for the last 9 months so his dad could stay home where he wanted to be, and just dropped everything else. That's ministry. That's love. That's enthusiasm. That's being in God. Here are a few suggestions just to get us thinking. If you're doing something because no one else will, it's a job. If you're doing it to serve the Lord, it's a ministry. Same task, different approach, different attitude. If you're doing it well enough to get by, it's a job. If you're doing it to the best of your ability, it's a ministry. If you will do it only so long as it doesn't interfere with other activities, it's a job. If you're committed to staying with it, even when it means letting go of other things, it's a ministry. If you quit because no one praised you or thanked you, it was a job. If you stay with it even when no one seems to notice, it's a ministry. And I tell you, you can read the reports here, but there's an awful lot of silent stuff that goes on around here that never gets written up. People who don't like the limelight, but they love ministry. It is hard to get excited about a job. It is almost impossible not to get excited about a ministry. People may say, well done when you do a good job, and they may increase your pay. The Lord will say, well done, good and faithful servant, when you complete a ministry. Finally, an average church is filled with people doing a good job. A great church is filled with people involved in ministry. Enthusiasm, being in God, is the key. Our Congregational and United Church of Christ forebears have done many firsts in the history of this country and in the history of Christianity. We look back with pride and sometimes with awe, wondering how did they manage to do what they did in their time, historical time, with so much opposition? How did they do it when what they were saying or doing seemed so foreign? They were subjected to jail or ridicule or worse. The courage, the boldness, the faith, yes, their enthusiasm, being in God. The only way to explain our spiritual heroes is that something between them and God had to be going on. Couldn't happen without that connection. Some highlights. The earliest Puritans started the first public schools here in the Mass Colony. And the first college, Harvard, in 1636 for, of all things, the training of ministers. Now, Harvard isn't known for that now. They have a small divinity school. Harvard's huge, but its roots to train ministers so you don't have to get a trained one from England to come over. You can have somebody here. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was clearly a faith-related adventure. People were coming to build a new society of God. While just to the south of us, the settlement of New York was a mercantile endeavor. So we don't have any mystery about why we don't like the Yankees. It's been going on since we got here. The first anti-slavery tract ever published in the colonies was written right here in Boston by Puritan Samuel Sewall, Chief Justice of the Massachusetts Superior Court and member of Old South Church. He wrote it in 1700, an anti-slavery tract. The U.S. Constitution was enacted 89 years later, and the original 13 colonies could not then come to an agreement about slavery because some would have begged out of the Union. And so a compromise was arrived at. And it would take another 75 years after the Constitution was framed, until after the bloodiest war in the history of our country was held before we began to settle the issue of slavery. In 1853, Antoinette Brown was ordained a minister of a Congregational church in New York State, making her the first American woman ordained into Christian ministry. Parenthesis. Did you know that when I was ordained in 1975, almost 125 years later, many very fine women seminary graduates still found it very difficult to even get an interview at most churches, just because they were women? The United Church of Christ was the first denomination to ordain an openly gay man. We had ordained gay people before, but they had never said so. This man said so. His name was Bill Johnson. I was in seminary at the time. He became an icon of courage and faith. And the churches in general were not thrilled. But he did the right thing. And we have come, slowly but surely, down that trail. All of these courageous trailblazers stand out for us, not just because of what they did, but why they did it, how they did it, when they did it. It wasn't a matter of just doing a job for any of them. It was a ministry because they clearly believed that not only were they in God, but God was in them, calling them to the scary task. They acted out their faith in risky ways, and they challenged us to follow and still do. Jesus made his message clear in the passage from John that I read earlier. He's speaking to the disciples in a closed room. It wasn't a public address. He's saying goodbye to them. He's trying to prepare them for the future without him because he knows that his day has come. I'm not speaking to you as slaves or as servants, he says, because, see, then you don't have any choice. You just have to do what you're told. Then it's just a job. He goes on, instead, I call you friends because I have revealed everything to you that God has revealed to me. His disciples would then choose in their freedom to serve, to heal, to preach, to teach, and to be rejected and to suffer great things because they were now fellow travelers fueled by the same Spirit that had so filled Jesus. Notice that he didn't say that they were to be friendly with each other. That's easy to do. No, they were his friends. There's an organic connection, and that changed everything. Being friends with the Spirit of Jesus is the definition of enthusiasm, onteos. Stanley Hauerwas and William Willimon make the following observation about Peter, who got taken apart and put back together again by the events of that night, that Thursday night. Peter, the most enthusiastic and impulsive of all the disciples. But they say, quote, without Jesus, Peter might have been a good fisherman, perhaps even a very good one. But he would never have gotten anywhere, would never have learned what a coward he really was, or even what a good preacher when he needed to be. Peter stands out as a true individual, or better, a true character, not because he went to therapy and became free, or became his own person, but because he had become attached to the Messiah and the Messianic community, which enabled him to lay hold on his life, to make so much more of his life than if he had been left to his own devices. He never lost his freedom, but when he became part of that community, when he accepted Jesus' invitation to be friends with Jesus, his life changed. And that is what Christian enthusiasm is all about. See how important it is to know the difference between a job and a ministry? In Peter's case, it made all the difference in the world. You don't have to do great eye-catching things that will make you famous. In the words of Mother Teresa, we're all called to do many, many small things, but with great love. A final epitaph from a rural New England gravestone. Here lies Josiah Curtis, who cobbled shoes to the glory of God. So read your annual reports. We have a lot of people doing a lot of great things around here. Some are written up, some aren't. But they're doing it for the glory of God. And you know what? It shows. Amen.